I never meant for it to start like this. It wasn't dramatic. No thunderstorm, no sudden confession, no accident of fate. It was smaller than that. So small I almost missed it. The brush of her sleeve against mine. The way her hand lingered a second too long when she passed me the mug of coffee. Her name was Elena, 46. A neighbor, though that word felt far too ordinary for the gravity she carried. There was nothing ordinary about the way she looked at me. As if she could see past the polite exchanges, past the casual greetings, into the restless thoughts I tried not to let show. I was 23, just old enough to believe I knew myself, and just young enough to be undone by her nearness. That morning, the hallway between our apartments smelled faintly of rain, though the sky had only been cloudy. She stepped out as I was fumbling for my keys, a book tucked under her arm, her hair loose in a way I'd never seen before. I said something. I don't even remember what. A neighborly greeting, probably too quick, probably too nervous. She smiled, and it was enough to stop me mid-sentence. Her smile didn't invite conversation. It invited silence. The kind of silence charged with meaning, where every breath feels like an answer to a question that hasn't been asked. "Coffee," she said suddenly, gesturing toward her door. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted it too much. Still, I followed. Inside, her apartment was warm in a way mine wasn't. Not cluttered, but lived in. Books stacked unevenly, a cardigan draped over the back of a chair, faint music humming low from another room. She set the book down and moved toward the kitchen, and I caught myself watching the way her shoulders moved beneath her blouse. We didn't talk much at first. She poured coffee into 2 cups and slid one toward me. Our fingers brushed on the rim. Not an accident. I knew it, and I think she knew I knew it. Her hand lingered just slightly, warm against my knuckles. I looked up. She was already looking at me. Not a long stare, not obvious, but one of those glances that lands heavy, that says more than words should. I should have said something casual, something safe. Instead, my voice came out lower than I intended. "You always drink it black?" She tilted her head, amused. "And you?" "Depends who I'm drinking it with." Her laugh was soft, unguarded, but her eyes didn't soften. They stayed sharp, testing, as though she was searching for something in me. The conversation was light, but underneath it, everything felt heavier, like stepping onto a frozen lake and hearing the faint crack of ice. Her wrist brushed mine again when she set her cup down. Too light to be necessary. Too intentional to be innocent. I could feel the warmth of her knee almost grazing mine beneath the table. The air between us thinned, every movement exaggerated. The turn of her head, the sweep of her fingers against her mug, the way her lips parted as if she wanted to speak and stopped herself. And then, she leaned just slightly closer. Close enough that I caught the faint scent of her perfume. Close enough that I felt her breath when she whispered. "If anyone finds out," my chest tightened. I didn't move away. I didn't want to. My reply came before I even thought it through. Quiet, steady, meant only for her. "Then let's make it worth it." Her eyes widened. Only for a second, but I saw it. The silence after was so loud it felt like the room itself was listening. And just then, a sharp knock rattled the door. The knock at her door went unanswered. She didn't move to answer it, and I didn't ask why. Whoever it was faded into silence, and when the hallway quieted again, we stayed seated, facing each other, as though nothing beyond her apartment mattered. It should have broken the spell. Instead, it sharpened it. Her gaze flickered toward the door, then back to me, her lips tightening slightly before she forced them into a smile. It wasn't the same as before. It carried something else, a hesitation that made me realize how careful she'd been. "You're braver than you look," she said finally, lifting her cup again. I tried to laugh, but it came out uneven, or just reckless. Her eyes lingered on mine longer than they should have, and in that space, the truth of it settled between us. This wasn't safe. Elena leaned back slightly, almost as if putting distance between us, though not enough to undo the charge. "People talk," she murmured, swirling what little coffee remained in her cup. "And they don't always talk kindly." I knew what she meant. The lines around her eyes weren't harsh, but they told their story. Years lived, decisions carried, maybe mistakes too. I wondered about the men before me, the ones who had touched her hand in kitchens like this, who had leaned close enough to hear the same whisper of perfume. Had she left them, or had they left her? And me, just 23, with nothing in my past that weighed heavier than a short college romance and the quiet ache of nights spent alone. She must have seen it in me, how untouched I was by real consequence. Maybe that's why she hesitated. Still, her nearness was impossible to ignore. When she leaned across to place her empty cup in the sink, her shoulder brushed mine. A faint spark, ridiculous and undeniable, ran through me. I pretended to shift casually, but I caught her eyes again. She knew. She sat back, resting her hand lightly on the table, fingers stretched open, close enough that I could see the faint blue veins beneath her skin. I wanted to reach across and cover it with mine, but the weight of hesitation held me. "You're too young," she said softly, not meeting my eyes. "And you're too beautiful for me to pretend I don't notice." Her hand froze on the table, then curled slightly, as if gripping invisible air. The silence stretched so long I thought I'd gone too far. But then, she looked up, and something shifted. She didn't smile this time. She just studied me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "Don't say things you'll regret," she whispered. I should have backed down, eased the moment with a laugh. Instead, I let the words hang, because regret was already there, woven into the quiet space between us, into her stillness, into my inability to look away. When she finally moved, it wasn't with words. She reached out, brushing the back of her hand against my shoulder as though adjusting a crease in my shirt. But her touch lingered longer than it should have. Neither of us spoke. Her hand fell away slowly, leaving behind a heat that settled deep, impossible to ignore. And though she pulled back, I knew, so did she, that neither of us was walking away untouched. The touch on my shoulder should have ended it. Light enough to pass for nothing, brief enough to deny. But it didn't end. It lingered in the silence long after her hand had fallen away, as though the air itself had memorized her warmth. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. Loud, insistent, breaking the fragile stillness. She glanced at it, then at me, hesitation flickering across her face. I watched the muscles in her jaw tighten before she silenced the call with a single swipe. No explanation. No apology. Just a quiet refusal to let the outside world in. But the interruption had pulled the air tighter, not looser. "You should go," she murmured. The words were firm, but her voice betrayed her. It wavered, soft, uncertain. I didn't move. "Do you want me to?" Her eyes met mine. Seconds passed. Too many. Not enough. "I don't know," she admitted. The honesty in her tone unsettled me more than any rejection would have. I stood, but not to leave. Something in me wanted to close the gap, to stand close enough that she'd have to choose between pulling away or letting the silence become something else entirely. When I stepped toward her, she didn't retreat. She stayed seated, chin lifted, eyes steady. Her breathing changed, though shallow, quick. "Someone could walk in," she whispered. "Your door's locked," I said. She shook her head faintly. "That doesn't stop whispers." I leaned down, resting my hand lightly on the edge of the table, close to hers. The closeness pulled the air taut again, every inch between us charged. She looked at my mouth, just for a second, before pulling her gaze back up to my eyes. It should have been enough to push me back, but it wasn't. I bent lower, close enough now that I could feel the warmth of her breath. "Elena," my voice cracked slightly. Her lips parted. She didn't speak, but she didn't stop me either. And then, another interruption. A knock, lighter this time, followed by a voice through the door. A neighbor's, casual, calling her name. My pulse spiked, and I froze. Her hand darted up, not to push me away, but to press against my chest, holding me still, holding me there. Her palm flat over my heartbeat. "Don't move," she mouthed. We stayed like that, her hand on my chest, my face inches from hers, while the neighbor called again, then faded down the hall. The silence that followed was deafening. She didn't remove her hand. If anything, her fingers spread slightly, as though she were testing how fast my heart was racing. "Elena," I whispered again. Her eyes softened, and for a heartbeat, I thought she'd close the space between us. Her breath touched my cheek. My lips almost brushed hers, but she pulled back, just barely, her hand slipping from my chest with trembling restraint. "We can't," she whispered, though her voice betrayed her with the faintest tremor. And yet she didn't step away. She stayed close. Too close. Closer than before. I thought she would step back. She didn't. Her hand lingered in midair as though it had nowhere safe to land. My chest still carried the ghost of her touch, The thrum of her palm pressed over my heartbeat. I should have moved. I should have laughed, broken the tension, made it easy for her. But I stayed, half standing, half leaning over her chair, close enough to see the faint tremor of her lashes. "Elena," I whispered. She flinched, barely, but enough. "Don't," she breathed, her voice cracking as though the word cost her more than speaking truth. "Don't what?" My voice was low, too low, as if saying it quietly enough might hide the weight of what I meant. Her lips parted, then closed again. She shook her head, her hair slipping loose from behind her ear. Without thinking, I reached up, brushing it back, my fingers grazing the warm curve of her cheek. She froze beneath the touch, but didn't turn away. The silence between us thickened. I could hear her breathing, fast, shallow. She leaned back slightly, but her chair caught her, leaving her nowhere else to go. "You're making this harder," she said softly. "You think it's easy for me?" Her eyes flicked up at that, sharp and searching. "You're young," she whispered. "You'll recover." "For me." She trailed off, her throat tightening around the words she couldn't say. "For you what?" Her gaze wavered, and for a second, I saw the loneliness she tried so hard to conceal. A hollowness, years wide, carved deep. I couldn't stop myself. I leaned closer, until her shoulder brushed mine, until my breath stirred the edge of her hair. "If anyone finds out," she murmured again, her voice trembling. I lowered my head, close enough that my lips nearly grazed her ear. "Then let it be worth it." Her eyes shut for a second too long, and when they opened again, there was no denying it. Desire, fear, and something more tangled together. "Why you?" she whispered, as if asking herself. "Why now?" "Because I can't stop," I said. The words left me before I could soften them. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her hand moved again, not away this time, but toward me. She touched the side of my jaw, tentative at first, then firmer, as if giving herself permission. My pulse hammered. "Elena." Her thumb brushed the corner of my mouth. I thought I might shatter. She leaned forward, so close now that her breath warmed my lips, so close I could almost taste the coffee still lingering on hers. My hand slid to the back of her chair, then to the small of her back, steadying her as she swayed ever so slightly toward me. Everything inside me begged to close the final inch. Her eyes fluttered half shut. Her lips parted. And then, she drew in a sharp breath, as if catching herself mid-fall. Her hand on my face trembled. "If this happens," she whispered, barely audible, "there's no taking it back." I didn't move. Neither did she. Our mouths hovered, one heartbeat away. We didn't kiss. Not yet. The space between us held the weight of everything unsaid, fragile, dangerous, inevitable. And then came the sound. Not a knock this time, something sharper. A voice, muffled through the thin walls of the apartment. "Elena." My stomach dropped. It wasn't a stranger's voice. It was familiar. Her friend, the one I'd seen lingering at her door more than once. Older than me, close to her age. Elena stiffened, pulling her hand from my face as if burned. She pushed back her chair, standing quickly, her breath ragged. "Go," she mouthed, her finger pressing to her lips. But I couldn't move. Not right away. The spell had been too thick, her nearness still clinging to me. "Elena." The voice called again, louder this time. "Are you in there?" Panic flickered across her features. She grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward the corner near the kitchen as if I were a teenager caught in the wrong house. The contact, her hand on me, firm, desperate, sent heat through me even as fear knotted my chest. She pressed me against the wall, her body close enough to hide me from sight if the door opened. I could feel the tremble in her grip. "Don't say a word," she whispered, so close her breath brushed my jaw. The knock came. Then another. She stepped toward the door, smoothing her blouse, but her voice shook when she called out. "Just a minute." I stayed frozen in the corner, every nerve screaming. When she cracked the door open, I heard the friend's voice clearer. I thought I heard something. "You all right?" Elena laughed, too lightly. "Yes. Just dropped a glass, that's all." Her lie hovered in the air, thin and fragile. I could see her hand gripping the doorframe too tightly, knuckles pale. The friend didn't press, only murmured something about checking on her later before footsteps faded down the hall. The door clicked shut. Silence rushed back. Elena didn't turn right away. Her shoulders sagged, her hand still braced on the frame as though it was holding her up. When she finally faced me, Her eyes were darker, heavier than before. "This is exactly what I meant," she whispered. I stepped forward, unable to keep my distance. He didn't see anything. "That doesn't matter." She shook her head, but she didn't back away when I closed the gap between us again. "If anyone even suspects," her voice broke. She swallowed, her throat working as though she were fighting down words she didn't want me to hear. "What?" I asked softly. Her lips trembled. Then, quieter, "He asked me once if I was seeing someone." The words hit me like a stone in still water. "And what did you tell him?" I said no. She exhaled sharply, as though confessing had cost her everything. Her hands, trembling, brushed against me when she moved past, too close, too deliberate. I caught her wrist, held it. Her breath hitched. Our eyes locked again, nothing left to disguise it now. "We can't keep pretending," I said. Her silence was an answer. And still, she didn't pull away. I still held her wrist. She didn't pull away. Her pulse beat fast beneath my fingers, a frantic echo of my own. "Elena," I said softly, but the word was more plea than name. Her eyes flicked to my hand, then back to my face. This is already ruined," she whispered. "We've crossed too many lines." "Then let's stop pretending we haven't," I replied. The silence thickened again, heavy enough to drown us both. She took a half-step closer, as if pulled against her will, until the air between us was nothing but heat. Her breath hit my chin, her shoulder brushed my chest, and still she didn't move back. "You don't understand what this will cost me," she said. Her voice was low, frayed at the edges. "I don't care what it costs," I whispered. "Not if it means walking away from you." Her lips parted, as if to argue, but no words came. Instead, her free hand lifted almost unconsciously, fingertips grazing my jaw. The touch was so light it nearly broke me. "Elena," my voice caught. Her eyes closed, and she leaned in just slightly, her forehead brushing mine. The world narrowed to her skin against mine, her breath shaky in the silence. Every part of me waited for the space between us to disappear. And then, her voice, barely audible, trembling. "If we do this, there's no undoing it." "Good," I said. Her laugh was soft, broken, desperate. "You're reckless." "I'm certain," I whispered back. For a moment, time seemed to falter. Her thumb stroked the side of my face. My hand slid from her wrist to her waist, tentative, trembling, but real. She didn't stop me. She leaned closer instead, her nose brushing mine, her breath mingling with mine, her body giving way just enough to rest against me. The last of her hesitation broke in that closeness. I felt it, the moment she stopped resisting. Her lips hovered over mine, close enough to taste without touching. Her body trembled against me, but her voice was steady now, a whisper against my mouth. "Then don't let go." I didn't. The kiss came slow, inevitable, like something that had been waiting for years to happen. It wasn't rushed, wasn't polished. It was messy, human, her hand clutching at my shirt, my grip tightening at her waist, the unsteady rhythm of two people caught between fear and wanting too much. When she finally pulled back, her eyes stayed closed a moment, as if she was afraid to see what she'd done. And when she opened them, the fear was still there, but so was something else. Something unshakable. "We can't go back," she whispered. "I don't want to," I said. She searched my face, her expression softening, and for the first time, I knew she believed me. We were no longer pretending. We understood. The silence after the kiss wasn't empty. It was full of the things we'd both tried to bury, the fear, the wanting, the years between us. She leaned against me, her forehead resting on my shoulder, her breath still unsteady. I held her there, neither of us speaking, both of us knowing words would break what had finally settled between us. When she did speak, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "You make me feel foolish." I pulled back just enough to look at her. "Why?" Her smile was faint, almost sad. "Because I'm old enough to know better. Old enough to be cautious. And here I am, choosing not to be." I brushed my thumb lightly over her hand, tracing the lines of her fingers. "And I'm young enough to know what I want. Maybe that balances us out." She laughed, quiet, reluctant, but real. The sound loosened something in me, something that had been wound tight since the first time I noticed her eyes linger on mine. The weight of doubt still lingered. I could see it in the way her gaze flicked to the floor, in how she kept shifting as if bracing for consequences. But I didn't let her drift away. I caught her hand fully this time, intertwining our fingers. Her hand tensed at first, then softened, her grip tightening around mine. Elena, I said gently, you're not a mistake. You're not something I'll regret. She searched my face, eyes sharp, as if testing whether I meant it. Whatever she found there, it made her shoulders finally drop. Relief softened her features, the guardedness slipping just enough to show the woman beneath, the one who had been carrying loneliness like armor. Slowly, she leaned closer until her head rested against mine. The warmth of her hair brushed my cheek, the scent of her perfume faint but steady, grounding me in the moment. I pressed my lips against her forehead, light, steady, a promise more than a kiss. Her hand curled against my chest, not pulling me closer, but holding me there, as though she feared I might vanish if she let go. For the first time, she whispered without hesitation, "Stay." The single word carried everything: fear, longing, surrender. "I will," I answered. We sat like that, close enough that the outside world felt far away. No interruptions, no neighbors, no need for explanations. Just us, finally still. Maybe tomorrow the doubts would return. Maybe the world would press in again with its judgments and whispers. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, she was in my arms, her fingers tangled in mine, her forehead against my lips. And for the first time, we weren't pretending. We were exactly where we wanted to be. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?